What's going on, Soul Nation? Ginger Prime here, and I originally wrote a script for this video, but unfortunately I think it came off sounding a little preachy, maybe even a bit privileged, and what I really want is a discussion. Now, what this does and what this starts is with a tweet from Destin Ligari saying, WoW has Raid MM, 14 has Raid MM, Division 2 has Raid MM, Destiny 2 fans, Raid matchmaking could never work in Destiny. Obviously, this is referring to matchmaking as it relates to the high-end Pinnacle content. Pinnacle is the word that I'm using because it sounds funny and it makes me laugh. But today I wanted to share really my unscripted thoughts here regarding raid matchmaking as it relates to Destiny 2 and with another game that was mentioned in Destin's tweet, Final Fantasy 14. Let's first by starting off to acknowledge my privilege right here and now as a content creator. I've been blessed by awesome groups of people willing to help me out because I'm a quote-unquote streamer. I really consider myself more a YouTuber, but that's neither here nor there. Regardless, privilege is a real thing, and I want to say first and foremost that I want to recognize that, and I also might no longer be a pure representation of what it is to be a gamer. But I want to talk to you guys today really about my thoughts on the dungeons and the raids within Destiny, within Final Fantasy 14, the difficulty of raid matchmaking. But again, I want this to be a discussion. I really am interested in your thoughts and your ideas of how it could come into the world of Destiny 2, and if you even want to see it come into the world of Destiny 2, because I do believe matchmaking comes with a cost, and sometimes that cost is out. It just is too pricey, but you don't see it. It kind of comes in after the fact, after hands have been shaken, and then you're running the content, and all of a sudden you realize, oh my goodness, this isn't going to work out. Anyway, so yesterday I was able to clear the Pit of Heresy and finally the Leviathan raid due to the just awesome folks over at Comic Story and Gaming. Benny is a guy that I've met through Final Fantasy 14 get-togethers within like the media tour and more like that, and the guy is just straight up awesome. I love his content. I'm plugging him right here now. We also did a podcast diving into 14 and Destiny 2 raiding in that scene, and so you can check out that podcast. I'll link to it in the description of this video if you haven't seen it already. Phenomenal conversation. Truly, I think probably the best podcast I've ever made. And that plug aside, with their help, I was able to clear the Pit of Heresy and the Leviathan raid, and I'm going to tell you hands down right now, that was a blast. Chat was engaged. It was such an awesome stream, and it was also awesome because I had people who knew what they were doing to kind of help teach me the ropes. However, I couldn't even imagine while playing that how difficult it would have been if I got matched in with a bunch of randoms, and on that note, how much toxicity there would be with said group, especially if things were not going right or certain mechanics or strategies weren't being played out together. There would be an expectation that the Destiny community would have to set with matchmaking. Matchmaking would have to come like attached to the idea that you have cleared this at least a number of times before you just said, yeah, I know what we're doing. Let's go ahead and just autofill me with a group. And we can talk about that. That's one idea, that clearing a certain number of times shows a level of understanding with the content to allow you to then use matchmaking just to find other people who just want to dive in. However, the contrast to this is both the dungeon and the raid took a lot of time. We're talking about an hour per each, and we were running, especially the raid, pretty quickly. We might have even cleared it in under an hour. I'm just using an hour as an example. Matchmaking content for an hour. The idea behind matchmaking is something that you could probably finish within a 15 to 20 minute, time span. But with content that's designed to take much longer, that's where we start to see a big difference between that and Destiny 2 and that in Final Fantasy 14, and it's the breadth of content that time takes. So let's look and compare raid to raid within Final Fantasy 14 and Destiny 2 real quick. Because within the raid scene within Final Fantasy 14 is that you queue in kind of to the boss. Within Stormblood and now Shadowbringers, the raid, the 8-man raid, is one boss fight. It's more like a trial now. And that content, while challenging and mechanically challenging, isn't designed to take an hour to get the clear. for that fight. It could take that long with wipes and things like that, but overall, you're talking about one boss fight. If you combined all of the raid, all of like Omega, all of Savage, whatever version, into one event, then yes, I could see how that could take easily an hour to go from boss to boss to boss with content and ads and things like that to kind of fill in the gaps. And really the question then comes, and the critique comes within 14, is what do we ultimately want for the raid scene itself? Are we okay with that one-off boss, or does the 24-man, which serves as the boss room, etc., serve as a better kind of component for it? But we'll dive more into that over on Work to Game at some point. Now, obviously, Final Fantasy XIV has matchmaking, and when we look at the type of content that they have, there's actually some nuance to it. And they also have a tool called the Party Finder, which in Destiny, that's kind of third-party sites talking about looking for group, etc. It's interesting that both of these games have similar kind of goals or destinations when it comes to the raiding scene. However, at the end of the day, they also have different ways they go about it, both in-game and using third-party tools, both differently. Because in Final Fantasy XIV, you have something called the Party Finder. This is a system in which that you can post. You can even set like requirements. This is a farming party. This is a learning party. This is a, to be able to actually join, you have to have actually cleared the content. If you're going to try to join a farming party, you can set those barriers. You can have those limitations. However, using third-party tools for DPS and numbering, people have gotten ranks. And that's something that Benny and I dived into really deeply regarding where do you rank in your content, because it's actually creating somewhat of a little bit of toxicity when it comes down to what's your rank, what's your DPS. I'm not going to run with you because you could lower my stats. You could lower my ranking, and thus it's too risky for me to try and teach you this content. Anyway, that's a topic for the podcast and maybe even another video if we want to explore that more deeply. But matchmaking within Final Fantasy XIV is nice. It's nice for me as a player to be able to use it. I use it all the time. I think the cost, when we talk about that, because I alluded to it a little bit ago, is connected more to the loss of community. Rarely do I have amazing PvE stories from matchmaking. Basically, I think it kind of falls into, we got our clear and we all went about our day. But more often than not, it's the negative interactions that I remember more. And that's just because, I guess, of human nature, evolution, how our brains are wired. We're automatically wired to be drawn into more of a negative style topic or a more, negative sounding news, because it's a part of how we evolved and how we understand survivability. You got to tell me what's bad that I need to be aware of. The good news in and of itself is something that's more of a luxury. But that all being said, it is still a nice to have feature. So what's the solution there? And unfortunately, there's no easy solutions. And that's why I really want to have this discussion with you all. What do you think? How do you think it would work? In my mind, I could see a party finder system, something built into the game of Destiny itself, working in order to try to find ways and similar-minded groups and people to be able to connect. I think the root of all of this with matchmaking is really, when we're saying we want matchmaking, we're actually asking for a deeper way that we can connect with other gamers, other like-minded gamers. Whether you're considered mid-core, hardcore, casual, honestly, those are just labels and it doesn't matter. Like, find the people you like to play with and play with them. But we're not all blessed. Not my brother doesn't play this Destiny 2. I can't get Chris to come play Destiny 2. But I've found other people. And that has taken a level of effort. And that level of effort hasn't come from within the game. It's come from outside the game. So all of a sudden, we're asking these individuals who want that connection to go and say, well, you need to go find another way to go about it because we're not going to help you out. Because again, you matchmake right into a strike within Destiny 2. You do the content is cleared, and then you go about your day. So that social fabric, that social connection, that person could just be an AI bot for all that we care. They're not really doing much. They're just adding damage. They might revive you because it's in their best interest to do so. But there's no connection. That's one aspect of it. I think the cost is connection. The other aspect of it is in the content itself, like we talked to at the beginning of this video, just briefly. Long form content, difficult content, Do you want to be matched with somebody who is only going to hold you back? Or do you want to be matched with somebody who is only going to yell at you because you might have made a mistake? There isn't that investment in a personal relationship because you haven't agreed to it. Now, Bungie's got their, and it's still in beta. They're, they're like, hey, we're going to try to find you a team of people, somebody who's willing to take you and teach you, and then you're going to be willing to listen and do that. And honestly, I think that's pretty epic and interesting, and hopefully we'll see that evolve. But I think there's still more tools that are needed. And I think that at the end of the day, if I was going to ever say, yes, bring matchmaking into Destiny 2, it would have to be connected completely with some form of test, some form of proof. And this is also on me, somebody who has not done this content for, and thus matchmaking doesn't necessarily serve, I think, the broader need of it. Because I think what people are wanting is like they want to be able to get connected with people that they can team up with, that they can learn the content with, and that they can hopefully have a good experience with. And then the end goal being what Destiny kind of tweeted out a long time ago and was eventually memed on, is that friend game. Me playing the Pit of Heresy was awesome, but I was playing it with people who legitimately are awesome, and I've gotten to know better, and we continue to play together, and we're developing that friendship that will last for years and years and years, and thus I will have these positive memories of it. But we got to find a way, rather than just sit here and match random people and together and just see what happens. We got to find a way, personally speaking, to help connect more of these players, to get them more involved into like these deep aspects of the game itself. And with that connection, I think all of a sudden, not only do you have more friends, but the game has more fans. And they have more people who are just like, there is some really cool stuff going on in this game. You got to come check it out with me. So if we can figure that out, that's what I would prefer. That's where I go with it. I think when we look at other games that have matchmaking, you have to try to compare apples to apples. And in some ways, like if you want a raid that's just, here's one boss fight, okay, here you go, and you're in and you're out. I think that is different from having to work your way up to that boss fight, because there's some differences there. Like I said with 14, if you could just spawn into the last boss of the Leviathan raid or any raid, you're on the last boss, you could just spawn in. If you fail, you can drop out, you can jump back in. But that's just not how the game's designed. So if you're thinking of asking for matchmaking and you want it, are we willing to also change how the game is designed and how its raids are designed? Or do we want to preserve that? But that's the question that I put to you guys. Let me know in the comments below what you're thinking and what you're feeling. Did I miss any points? Did I hit something too hard where maybe I shouldn't have? Honestly, I just would love to know. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did and you feel like helping it out with the algorithm, hit the like button, but only if you feel like we've earned it. If you're new here, welcome. If you feel like we've earned your subscription, I hope you hit subscribe and let me know in the comments below. But for Ginger Prime Gaming, my name's Brian. This has been my Destiny 2 coffee chat regarding raid matchmaking. I'm looking forward to your thoughts, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.